Hey team, Yasin here, and in this training, we're going to be going over the instructions for skills session number 2. It's all about building rapport. Super excited for you to go ahead and go through this specific skills session. So maybe you're excited. Maybe you're nervous. Maybe you're scared. Maybe the first one was so easy for you that you're like, you know what? I got this one in the bag. And so don't worry, you totally got this just like the last one that you did. Just a quick recap. What is a skill session? It's going to be where we go ahead and practice the skills that we have gone ahead and gone through so far. And so remember, just because you went through this module and are getting the knowledge, you need to be able to put in the reps, aka put in the action, so that way you can actually acquire these coaching skills. And that's exactly what it is that we are doing with these skills sessions. Just a quick recap as to why these skills sessions are important. Reason number 1, knowledge without practice is meaningless. So as always, just because you see somebody else coaching doesn't mean that you will know how to be an amazing coach. So you got to be able to put it into practice so that way you can be an awesome coach as well. Reason number 2 is that we learn best when we teach. So that way you can go ahead and use all of your brains to make sure that you actually know and learn everything from every single different angle. And that's because you are going to be teaching / practicing it. Reason number 3 is that you are going to be able to experience what it is and how it feels to be on the other side of a coaching conversation. So that way you can actually be a client, you can actually be a student of an RWP. And so other than learning how to be able to make buttloads of cash inside of the Remote Wellness Academy, you are also going to be kind of like a mini RWP client or student of your partner. So that way you can experience what it feels like to be on the other side. And so that is the top 3 reasons. I'm sure there are more, but those are the top 3 reasons of why these skill sessions are so important. Now, just a quick friendly reminder. There may be students who after doing the first one, they're like, oh man, I don't know if I can do this. Man, I don't know these skill sessions. They kind of make me uncomfortable. Well, here is a reminder to those students is that if you want to become someone who can make $10,000 plus per month online remotely, well, guess what? It's going to mean that you are going to have to get out of your comfort zone. The person that you are right now does not have the life that you want to have. And the reason being is because you have not yet become the person who can effortlessly create that life. And so you will need to learn how to be able to leave your version 1.0 self and be able to become something new, become someone new. If you want to grow, you are going to have to leave your comfort zone, and your current comfort zone means that there is no growth there. And so ultimately, remember this. If you always do what you have always done, you will always get what you have always gotten. If you want to have something that you have never had before, you are going to have to become someone you have never been, think about things the way that you had never have, and do things that you never have done, okay? And so ultimately, what you need to understand through these skill sessions is that success is outside of your comfort zone. Where the magic happens is outside of your comfort zone, is that you are going to have that conversation if you want to grow with comfort and say, hey, guess what? We breaking up, honey. This just not working no more, right? Because ultimately, those people who are growth oriented understand that they are going to have to get out of their comfort zone. And that is why I wanted to go ahead and remind you of that before we actually get into the instructions for skill session number 2. And so let's go ahead and talk about that. Let's go ahead and talk about skill session number 2. Because inside of this skill session, we are going to be practicing 2 of the most important skills that a coach can have, which is matching and mirroring and paraphrasing and verbal mirroring. Now, keep in mind, just like we talked about inside of the trainings for both of those skills, technically, yes, there are 4 skills here, but what we do is we primarily use matching and we primarily use verbal mirroring. And so as a result, we don't typically use mirroring in the way that you would do it for body language. We typically just stick to matching, and then we typically don't use paraphrasing. We typically do use verbal mirroring more. And so those 2 are going to be the skills that we focus on. But remember, all of these skills are very critical for building rapport, and because rapport is the key to building trust, and getting into rapport is the first step, is the first essential step to any successful human interaction. That is why we are practicing these skills, not only for coaching, but also in life as a whole. Period. And so in the end, remember, without rapport, no coaching or transformation technique will work. And that is exactly what it is that we are going to be practicing inside of these skill sessions. So let's go ahead and talk about exactly a recap of these coaching skills. So the very first skill is going to be practicing matching. What is matching and why is matching important? Matching is one of the easiest things a coach can do to get into rapport with a student or anyone in general. Because why? Because people like people who are like themselves and they don't like people who are not like themselves. Regardless about how you feel about that or the way that things should be, the truth is that that's how we are as humans. And so if you can be like someone or make them feel like you are like them by using matching, then they are more likely to know, like, and trust you. How do you do matching? Well, we had an entire training on that. So make sure you do look back at that. But just a reminder, we do typically match voice, body language, energy, words and vocab, and typically writing styles. And so we also talked about mismatching and how you can use that to your advantage during communication or during a conversation. Okay, so again, remember, reference the matching and mirroring training if you want a refresher on these details before your skills session. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Let's go ahead and hop into verbal mirroring and exactly a recap on verbal mirroring, because that is the second skill that we are going to be practicing inside of this skill session. So remember, verbal mirroring is important because it helps the student feel understood. It helps relax their limbic brain and allows them to open up, because when someone hears their own words repeated back to them, it's like a direct signal to their limbic brain that, hey, this person gets me, therefore it's okay for me to relax. How do you do verbal mirroring? Well, remember, we had entire training on that. And so make sure that you do go ahead and reference that if you do need a reminder. But overall, remember that good listeners and how they verbally mirror is that they first, curious exploration, they wait for the response, and then they repeat it back. So you're saying, did I get that right? They wait for confirmation or clarification. If it's clarification, they verbally mirror again. If it's confirmation, then they proceed to the next question. Remember, we went ahead and talked about 4 different templates and scripts and formats. And then we also mentioned that you can use the keywords and phrases when we speak in general, other than just repeating back to what the person says. So again, if you need a refresher on this, make sure that you go ahead and look back at the actual training for this before your skills session. Awesome. So skills session number 2, right? These are 2 skills that we are going to be using all the time as coaches, as remote wellness practitioners. And later on, you're also going to see how these are the same skills that we actually use in order to get new students as well, right? And so these skills are the foundation of how you make $3,600 per student. So when you are talking to a prospective student, somebody who is interested in joining your coaching program, these are the same skills that you're going to be learning how to use in Module 5 and in Module 6. And so that's why it's so important for us to actually practice them, because ultimately, until the person that you are speaking to feels understood, nothing else can happen. And so this is why skill session number 2 is so important, because remember, good listeners use multiple skills. And that's why we're going ahead and talking about this over and over and over again. Conscious listening process, conscious listening, curious exploration, matching, verbal mirroring. And so at this point, you have really learned all of these skills in the conscious listening process, okay? However, although you now have the knowledge for all of these 4 skills, inside of this skill session, what we're going to be doing is we're isolating specifically matching and verbal mirroring, okay? Why? Because of the fact that we want to get reps specifically for that. So even though in your skill session, you could throw in some curious exploration, spice it up with some conscious listening and all that kind of stuff, ultimately we're trying our best to highlight and specifically stick to the skills that we are practicing, so that way we can get more and more reps with that. I hope that makes sense. Let us know if you need clarification on that, but it should be pretty clear. So with that being said, let's go ahead and talk about the skill session 2 instructions. Okay, so skill session number 2 instructions. First off, you want to make sure that you have properly gone through the how-to skills session training. It's earlier in this module because you want to know and understand the logistics of how the skill session is going to work. Now, note, for each skill session, you want to partner with a different student in the RWA student community, because that is going to give you the most amount of practice working with different students, getting different perspectives, because that's how it's going to be in the real world, right? You're going to have different students and you want to be able to get an idea of how different people communicate, okay? So that's an important note there. That is step number 1. Make sure you actually have gone through the how-to skill session training. Okay, very important. Now, instructions for this specific skill session. Let's go ahead and talk about that right now. Is number 1 is the pre-work. So step number 1 is the pre-work. Number 1, you want to read through the below question sequence prior to beginning your skill session to familiarize yourself with the sequence. Okay, so we're going to get into that in here in a second in terms of what the question sequence is, but you want to make sure you read through these instructions so that way you understand what's going on here. Okay, number 2 is you want to review the nutrition what to eat training to familiarize yourself with the 8 tools for balancing blood sugar, because that is exactly what we're going to be talking about inside of this skill session. So the guide is available for you. You can reference that, look through that very quickly. It's going to be very easy for you. Okay. And then number 3 for the pre-work is you want to partner with another student. And so this is going to happen in groups of 2. All right. So that is instruction number 1. Instruction number 2 is obviously the RWP is going to start the recording. So the person whose Zoom link it is going to be the RWP and they're going to start the recording. Remember, each RWP will be responsible for their own recording. So that's very important. That's instruction step number 2. Instruction step number 3 is that in the question sequence below, we're going to be using verbal mirroring. Okay, so in a second here, we're going to go ahead and go through the question sequence. But when you begin verbal mirroring, which is going to be noted in the sequence, you want to start with mirroring and say, hey, so what I hear you saying is, fill in what they said, do I have that right? Or what I'm hearing you say is, do I have that right? Or you can simply repeat back the students' words back to them without actually asking them, do I have that right? Right? And so there's multiple ways that you can do this. You're going to see that noted in the prompts inside of the question sequence that we're about to go through right now. But I just want you to know you don't have to follow those prompts exactly, right? Feel free to be able to use some of the other templates, some of the other scripts that were mentioned inside of the actual training regarding verbal mirroring. Okay, so it's going to be just very important to understand that you don't have to follow the prompts exactly. You can kind of switch it up, but for the most part, it is available for you there as a guide. Okay, so let's go ahead and go through the question sequence that you're going to go through with your partner. Okay, so using the 8 tools for balancing blood sugar, the coach begins the following sequence. So the coach is going to say, hey, which of the tools from the nutrition what to eat training seem most exciting for you to try this week? And then after that, the person who is the student, they're going to respond, okay? And then the coach, what they're going to do is they're going to verbal mirror the students respond back to them and also using matching. So they're going to say, hey, you know, what I'm hearing you say is, but do I have that right? Remember, you can use a different template format there as well if you'd like. And then the coach is going to go to the next question. And so they're going to say, in order to insert what the student wants to try this week, what might you need to let go of? Okay, again, then the person who is the student is going to respond, and then the coach is going to verbal mirror. Again, they can use a different template if they want, and then the coach is going to go to curious exploration, which is the next question. Who else might benefit in your life when you make this change? And so you can see here the coach is doing verbal mirroring and matching, and then they are moving on to the next question. Okay, let me go ahead and scroll down here a little bit so you can see more of what's going on here. And then the student is going to go ahead and respond, or the person who is the student. Okay, then again, the coach is going to verbal mirror and match. They can use a different template or format, and they're going to go to the next question, which is what would be the best part of that? And then after that, student's going to respond to that question. And then again, the coach is going to verbal mirror, and they're also going to use matching. Again, using a different template if they want. And then right after that, the coach is going to move to the next question. They're going to say, hey, for a moment, close your eyes and imagine it's 1 week from now. You've successfully done, insert what the student wants to try, breathe into that, inhale and exhale with the student. Does this accomplishment feel like it's in line with the person you want to become? So you can see here we're putting in some identity work here, okay? Then the person who's a student is going to respond. Again, the coach is going to verbally mirror while also matching. Again, they can use a different template if they want. And then the coach is going to move on to the next question. So this is a question sequence, okay? So the next question is going to be wonderful. Given that, what is one action that you can take in the next 24 hours that will move you measurably closer to insert what the student wants to try this upcoming week, right? So that's the coach's next question. Again, the person who's the student is going to respond. Then the coach is going to again verbally mirror while also match. Again, they can use a different format if they want, and then go to the next question. What needs to be in order to make taking this action inevitable? What needs to happen, right? And so again, the person is going to respond, the coach is going to verbally mirror and match, and then the coach is going to move to the next question. Who or what in your life can hold you accountable to this action? Okay, that's the next question. The student's going to respond to that. The coach is again going to verbally mirror and match to make sure that they understand what the student is saying. That way the student also feels understood. And then finally, the coach is going to move on to the next question and say, hey, great job today. Before we complete, what insight, aha, or appreciation are you taking away from this session? And that is going to be the last question inside of the question sequence. And the beautiful thing, we're going to touch on it a little bit later inside of this module, is the beautiful thing about this question is that it also boosts you up as an RWP, as a coach, because now the person is literally telling you what insight, aha, or appreciation they had. And so that way it's kind of a boost for you as well as you are a coach and a remote wellness practitioner. Okay, so that is the question sequence. That is what it's going to look like as you are going back and forth. And so the coach and the RWP is getting the action, is getting the reps, is getting the repetition of actually practicing verbal mirroring as well as matching. Okay, and then what's going to happen after that is instruction step number 5 is ending the session. So once the question sequence is completed, coach is going to thank the student for sharing. Then you're going to go ahead and switch roles. You're going to exchange Zoom links and you're going to meet on the other student's Zoom link because now they are going to be the remote wellness practitioner coach. And then you're going to start again because now that the roles are switched, the new RWP coach is going to go through the same question sequence with the other student. Reminder, 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 do not forget to start recording. This is very important, okay? When you switch, don't just assume, oh, the recording is there. Remember, each RWP coach is responsible for their own recording, and so be selfish about this, okay? And then also remind your fellow students, hey, you haven't started recording, record. Very important. You don't want to have to mess that up, okay? Couple quick notes on this, okay? Here we go. No timer. Note number 1, there is no timer for this activity because it's really just a question sequence. And so going through those questions and answers should not take longer than 10 to 20 minutes to go through for each student. However, you do want to just be respectful overall. Don't blabber on. Just make sure that you are succinct to the point, but also be nice and give some substance, right? You don't want to just be giving one-word answers or one-sentence answer. Be a good student so that way they can be a good student for you as well, right? Number 2 note is that you do not have to start immediately. When you first get on the Zoom link, okay, the very first time you get on the Zoom link with your partner, this is a new student in the program that you're meeting. And so use a few minutes to, hey, introduce yourself, to catch up. Hey, nice to meet you. My name is Yasin. I live in Dallas, Texas. So before you start the question sequence, build some rapport, right? Don't be weird, right? You can take some time to get to know each other. And so that way the question sequence feels a little bit more natural, but obviously don't take too long either because you want to be respectful of each other's time, right? So take a couple minutes, 5 minutes. Hey, nice to meet you. I've been in the program for this long and, this is where I live and this is my, my kids and family, whatever you want to do to introduce yourself, but you don't have to start immediately. Take about 5 minutes to introduce yourself, and then you can get into the question sequence from there. And so these are the instructions specifically for skills session number 2. Let us know if you have any follow-up questions in regards to this. Pretty straightforward, but happy to answer any questions if you do have them in regards to these instructions, okay? On top of that, let's go ahead and talk about practicing skills in isolation. The goal of this skills session is to get as much practice on matching and verbal mirroring as possible. Why? Because although this might not be how it feels like in a normal coaching conversation, in order for us to be able to practice the skill in isolation, we are almost like excessively practicing this, right? Because in a normal coaching conversation, we're actually going to be using some of the other skills in conscious listening as well, right? Yes, we're practicing curious exploration. We are practicing conscious listening. We are practicing matching. We are practicing verbal mirroring. But on top of that, we might add a little bit more curious exploration in a normal coaching conversation. But the goal of this skill session is to literally match and verbal mirror to the point that it feels weird, to the point that it feels excessive. Why? Because we're trying to get in as much practice as possible. And so it is going to feel weird, and that's okay because it's new. You're going to feel yourself literally repeating back way more than you are used to. It's going to feel unnatural. And so for those students who feel uncomfortable with this, that's okay. Let it be strange, because remember the definition of a skill. Skill equals knowledge times reps. And so what we are doing is our goal is to get in as many reps as possible. We're talking about volume of reps, more quantity, more action. We are purposely aiming for imperfect action so that way we can actually apply the knowledge as many times as possible. So don't worry, you don't have to do it perfectly. The more you do it, the more normal it is going to feel. And you're going to find it's very interesting to communicate with people in this way, right? It's almost impossible impossible for there ever to be misunderstanding or miscommunication, because you're literally repeating back what the person said and then making sure that that is exactly what you heard and exactly what the other person wanted to say. And so as you get better at this skill, eventually you will feel that it is so easy to be able to understand people so well, right? And this is how you are going to know if you are doing the conscious listening process properly, okay? Now, a quick note on this. If you want to get even more reps in, if you want to get even more action, you say, you know what, I want to be the best dang coach that I can be. Well, guess what? You can practice this in your personal life. I would highly encourage you to have fun with this. Let's go ahead and start doing this with our family. Let's go ahead and start practicing this with our spouse. Let's go ahead and start practicing this with our friends, right? Because when you practice more and more and more of matching, you practice more and more and more of verbal mirroring, and you do it in your personal life, I promise you it is going to progress your coaching career and your profession so much more. And then on top of that, it has the added benefit of having more of your friends and family actually like you more. Hey, that's never bad, right? And so give it a shot. Let us know how it goes. I'm really excited for you to not only do it through the skill session, but also really start applying this in your personal life and seeing your personal life transform as a result of you becoming a better coach, a better listener, a better overall human being that understands these skills in a way that the vast majority of the population does not. Beautiful. Now, as a quick reminder, I do want to just go ahead and put this in there. Remember, the proven repeatable process for proven repeatable income. Literally everything is already built out for you, except for the fact that we cannot actually coach your students for you, right? So remember, the how to get students, the how to get clients, even the process of how to get people to pay you $1,200, $2,400, $3,600, it's already built out for you. But guess what we can't provide? The delivery of the actual product to your student. Well, we could, but then they would be our student. And then we would be making the $1,200 to $3,600 from each of your students. But we don't want to do that. We want you to make the money. And so what do we do instead? That is exactly why we are doing phase number 1, which is the remote wellness certification, where you get walked through phase number 1 of this program. So that way you have the certification. So that way you can provide the product, which is the transformation program, to your students. So that way you can collect the cash and make the monies. And so we literally give you the transformation program in a box and give you the certification, so that way you can feel confident in delivering the product. And we give you the templates, the swipe files, the outlines, the activities, copy and paste. This is the closest thing that we can do to literally giving you everything in a box. And then once you get through phase number 1, boom, that's when you've unlocked everything. Does that make sense? And so ultimately, my question to you is that even with everything being provided to you in a way that is not given anywhere else, literally in any other program, are you going to get overwhelmed and call it quits? Or do you have what it takes in order to be successful? And so ultimately, what baby are you going to be? Mission accepted, I got this, or abort mission? Hopefully at this point, you've made it far enough. You say, you know what? Mission dang accepted. I am ready. I am ready to rock this, and I'm going to absolutely crush this. And so that's exactly why, on that note, skill session, you're going to do great. I know you're going to do an amazing job inside of this session. I really want to commend you for being willing to even try it. Remember, it does not have to be perfect. This is what practice is for. This is why we practice here, because practice makes progress. That way you can get all of your nerves out and do all of your stumbles and do everything imperfectly, okay? That is why we are practicing here. That way when you are ready to go out and actually start working with your own students who are paying you, you have the practice under your belt, and I know you are going to absolutely crush this. You totally got this, okay? Let's go ahead and now talk about your action steps specifically for this skill session. Remember, this is where the work for module number 4 comes in. Number 1, you want to go ahead and make sure you watch and study this training in full. Number 2, you want to comment your availability on the skill session number 2 student community post. Let the other students know your location, your time zone, and your availability. Remember, you want to partner with a new student for each skill session to help you get the most exposure to different types of people. Action step number 3, you want to reply to another student's availability, ask them to partner up. Action step number 4, have the DM conversation, schedule with the student. Remember to be professional. Remember time zone differences. Action step number 5, conduct your skill session with your partner according to the how-to skill session training, as well as the instructions inside of this training. Make sure you record. Don't forget, critical, make sure you record. Number 6, upload your skill session to YouTube. Follow the instructions that were outlined for you in the how-to skill session training. Make sure it is marked as unlisted, so that way it's not public. And then action step number 7, reply back to your original comment on the skill session number 2 student community post. This is a typical outline that you can follow. Here is my skill session number 2 with tag your partner, unlisted YouTube link, The skills session was, I learned this, da 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 da. How did the skills session go? Let us know. What did it feel like practicing these skills? What did you learn? And what are your thoughts? And so those are the 7 action steps for skills session number 2. I'm super excited for you to go out there, put it into practice, and start acquiring these amazing skills that are going to radically transform your professional life and your personal life. And so with that being said, I can't wait to see your skills session posts inside of the student community, and I will catch you on the next training.